Hello, this is Paul Kelway, the Wildlife Preparedness and Response Manager at OSRL Response, and welcome to the fourth episode in a series of interviews I've been doing with wildlife response organisations that have been participating in the Global Wildlife Response System project. The intention is now to transition GOWRS from a project to a live service, guaranteed four-person assessment team that would be available through OSRL, and to raise awareness of the incredible organisations that have been collaborating on this. I'm hosting monthly conversations with each of those network partners. This month, I'm joined by Mike Ziccardi from California's Old Wildlife Care Network. Mike is the Executive Director at the One Health Institute at the University of California in Davis. He's the Director of California's Old Wildlife Care Network and Director of the California Veterinary Emergency Team. He's acted as an OSRL Response veterinarian and Old Wildlife Response Director during more than 50 spills nationally and internationally, most notably as the Marine Mammal and Sea Turtle Group Supervisor for NOAA during the Deepwater Horizon oil spill in 2010. He received his DVM as well as his Master's and Doctorate in Epidemiology from UC Davis. Well, Mike, thank you so much for making the time to speak with me today.
Thank you, Paul, for the opportunity.
So this is the fourth of our episodes interviewing organisations from the GOWRS project. In the last interview, JD Bergeron from International Bird Rescue introduced briefly the Old Wildlife Care Network, but can you perhaps elaborate on that, just to introduce the network, what's the mission and where and how do you carry out that work?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Excuse me. So the Oil Wildlife Care Network, it's a program based out of the Wildlife Health Center within the School of Veterinary Medicine at UC Davis in California. And so the Wildlife Health Center is dedicated to protecting the health of conservation of free-ranging wildlife. And really, the Oil Wildlife Care Network was the basis for us establishing this wildlife program within the #1 veterinary school in the world. So with the Oil Wildlife Care Network, our mission is to provide the best achievable capture and care of oil-affected animals. And we take the term best achievable very, very seriously. So we're always pushing to try to do things better, to learn what we can from incidents, from preparedness activities, to continue to improve what we do. And how we approach this is it's what we call our 4 R's. Readiness, so emphasizing preparedness, if at all possible, developing protocols, doing trainings, drills and exercises, continuing to partner with organizations, etc. We have research, so we actually fund in a competitive way grants from organizations throughout the world. So we actually have a competitive grants program as well as doing research within the UC Davis staff. We have response, obviously, being able to respond immediately for spills anywhere within our kind of response area, and then reaching out, sharing our information with our partners, with the public, with schools, basically trying to educate where we can. And so how we do this is we have 2 different programs within the Oil Wildlife Care Network. We have our California operations, which is a partnership with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, Office of Spill Prevention and Response. And so we're charged with responding anywhere in California should there be an oil spill. And how we do that is we've partnered with 44 organizations within California, which includes International Bird Rescue, which you just heard from. And so we're responsible for leading wildlife response efforts and training individuals. So we actually have over 1,600 people in California in our database we can call on at a moment's notice should a spill occur. Our second arm of the program is our global operations. And so that's providing assistance, preparedness activities, etc., both nationally within the US, as well as internationally as part of the GOWRS project as well. So fairly wide mandate and something we're very proud of.
Oh, that's fantastic. And as you say, it's truly a collaborative effort. I mean, with the number of network partners that you have as well, and that linkage between government and non-governmental organizations. Is there I mean, there's been many responses, and you personally have been involved in many of those as well. I mean, is there an example of that work specifically that you think really illustrates just what the network does and how it carries out that work?
There are a number of examples on that. As far as how we do it in a collaborative fashion, probably the most recent example would be the Refugio oil spill that happened in 2015. So this was a pipeline that degraded to the point where it leaked oil onto the land and then ran into a culvert into Refugio State Beach, which is near Santa Barbara in central Southern California. So released about 140 to 160,000 gallons, both on land as well as in the water. It's a region of high environmental sensitivity and high public sensitivity as well. So this is really the region where an oil spill in 1969 actually created the U.S. Environmental EPA, as well as created the Clean Water Act through the Platform A blowout that occurred in that area. So very high sensitivity and the need to respond. And we were able to respond immediately in that area. It's also a response that had both birds as well as marine mammals that occurred as well. But one of the things I'm most proud of in that situation is at that time we had 33 member organizations. We had 21 organizations that actually provided either staff or volunteers to the effort. We had more than 150 people involved overall in the Santa Barbara area, but then also caring for birds in the Los Angeles area and caring for marine mammals in San Diego. So it really shows the breadth of our program. We utilize 3 of our 12 primary care facilities. We established 3 additional stabilization sites, and all of those worked together, both the people, the equipment, and the facilities, to really show a robust system that can respond immediately to care for animals in crisis.
That's incredible. I mean, it's really an example of a holistic approach to wildlife response. I mean, thinking of all the elements that are involved and just making sure that they're integrated fully across all these different disciplines that have to essentially work together.
Absolutely. And that the holistic approach, I mean, that's the basis of both the Oil Wildlife Care Network, but it's also the basis of the One Health Institute that's at the school, is looking at how animal health, environmental health, and human health all interact with one another. And I mean, oil spills are a perfect example of that, where people are in crisis. And if there's not a robust response system to care for wildlife, people are going to put themselves at risk as well. So it's another excellent reason why having a professional, immediately deployable system is so important for effective oil wildlife preparedness.
Absolutely. So you mentioned about the in-state California response and the more global approach. So as I mentioned at the beginning, Old Wildlife Care Network has been one of the partner organizations in the multi-year Global Old Wildlife Response System project. So in terms of that work, what do you see as one of the greatest achievements of collaborating at that international level and working together on that project?
Sure. There are so many benefits that have happened in the almost decade that we've been working on this GOWRS project. Probably the most important thing is developing a formalized system for worldwide collaboration and coordination. Our organization, professional oil wildlife organizations, have met and worked together for, back since the late 80s, early 90s, but really a systematic approach of working together on specific projects instead of it being 1 or 2 organizations across all 10 to 11 organizations together on different projects, readiness activities, training, animal standards, all the core things that are necessary for good preparedness. Working together on those things to share knowledge and experience, to make it so that those approaches are not specifically related to, say, North America or Europe, but having those apply no matter what the region is, no matter what the species or taxa is involved, no matter what the environment is. Having that developed kind of at a global approach and having that with buy-in from all the key organizations, I think has been tremendous. And simply working together, knowing how people approach things, even outside of the documentation that we've developed and the guidelines and protocols, better understanding how people do things. I think it's made each individual organization stronger, as well as made the global community more robust.
It's like it's an evolution of the network principle in that way.
Absolutely.
And I should say too, you are also currently the chair of the GOWRS steering group. So thank you very much for doing that role. So we're at a point now where we're looking at transitioning this from a project to an actual Tier 3 international service. So why do you think it's so important for wildlife response preparedness to make that transition and get that funded?
Yeah. Well, we've been working on this now for 5, 6, 7 years as a project and been very fortunate to be funded as part of the JIP Project Joint Industry Program through funding through MIPICA as well as through OSRL. But that funding has been relatively limited. And so it has allowed us to do excellent work, but it's been at a funding level where it's things that we can take a portion of our time to work on, but not really solely dedicated on this thing. What additional funding and moving the project into a service provision can do for us is with that increased investment, it allows each of the organizations, many of which are not-for-profit organizations that rely on charitable donations, etc., to survive, having core funding that allows us to bring on additional people or to really have the GOWRS principles be a core part of their jobs. What that does is that'll allow us to have the bandwidth and the freedom to be able to really be ready 24/7, 365 to be able to respond immediately. Right now it's in best endeavors because it isn't a core portion of any of our duties. But having that investment, it'll allow us to provide the preparedness activities that we think are needed and industry agrees that are needed in these days, especially post-Macondo, where we realize wildlife response is a core element of oil spill preparedness across the board.
So it's really sort of taking that next step and entering this new paradigm where it's really truly integrated, and we can really look at the international picture and say, you know, there's some capability and there's some sort of funded, structured systems in place to really support not just response, but I guess also future preparedness efforts too.
Absolutely. I think in the past, oiled wildlife response has been this black box. It's oiled animals are collected and given over to the charitable organizations to care for, and the cleanup activities and all the other things existed on separately. And really what we've seen, especially over the past 20 years, is the professionalization of oiled wildlife preparedness and response, and the real need to have it an integral part of the overall preparedness structure, but then also response. What we don't want is to have oiled animals go into this building and clean animals come to the outside. What we want is to make sure everybody understands what is going on, making sure that the communication is occurring back to the incident management team or whatever, so that, again, it is at a cohesive approach to response writ large.
Mm-hmm. And I suppose in that regard, I mean, we talked about holistic response, and people think of oiled wildlife response, they think of responding to animals after they become oiled, but of course that integration is also making the most of those strategies that actually prevent that oiling in the first place. And that can really only happen with that integration.
Absolutely. That really, we talk about response activities. Really, it's only if we fail in keeping the oil away from the animals or the animals away from the oil. If animals do get oiled, that's kind of at the end. But what we can do to assist responders in keeping the oil away, so providing support for cleanup activities, operations, but then also the preparedness side of that, and then adding on to try to keep animals away as far as deterrence, as far as preemptive capture, all of those things. The easiest way to care for an oiled animal is for it not to be oiled in the first place, and that's
Right.
what we want. So.
Right. Yeah. No, absolutely. It's a really important point. So we talked about what it would mean for wildlife response preparedness if this transitions to a live service. So this question is about what it would mean for your organization. And of course, you're at the university, but you're also the director of a network. So I suppose, it's a sort of multifaceted sort of question in that sense. What do you think it would mean for the network?
I think it would be tremendous for the network. Currently, with the way the system exists right now, it's myself and a second member of my team that can be involved in the project just because of the activities that we have going on, our obligations to the state of California, our obligations to those organizations we have contracts with, including National Marine Fisheries Service in the U.S. But were this to become a service, what that would do is it would allow us to broaden our involvement. So just beyond the 1 or 2 individuals within my team, but have it be more of the 12 people that we have working on spill response. But it also is an entry point into our member organizations within California. If they're interested in participating, we could bring a number of those organizations or individuals through the UC Davis involvement to GOWRS to really increase the breadth and the scope of what this service proposal could do. So it really, if and when the service proposal does move forward, it could really be a game changer as far as the level of readiness that we have at a global scale for Tier 3 response.
Oh, it's great, and we'll certainly keep doing what we can to keep engaging with all our members on that. So, well, the final question here, as people who've heard the other podcasts will know, is that we've taken the opportunity to think about our next featured partner in the interview series. So the next GOWRS partner to be interviewed by myself will be ProBird, another network in Germany. So just to end, just to perhaps ask you if you can say something about the organization, something you particularly admire about ProBird.
Well, in thinking about ProBird, trying to think of words that describe the organization, the people involved, and the two that do come to mind right from the start are passion and dedication. It's a smaller organization and again, a charitable organization, but just their dedication to animal welfare and wildlife conservation issues as a whole, I think is unmatched. Sasha Regman, who has been involved in GOWRS, the GOWRS project from the start, he is just so dedicated to the effort. The other thing about ProBird is even though they work with us on oiled wildlife preparedness and response, they have a broad mandate. I mean, their education programs as far as plastics in the oceans, they've generated some really great materials for younger children, teaching them about some of the challenges of pollution. Their work at all different levels and all different sectors of things that can impact wildlife and care for those animals. It's really wonderful. And so it is that passion, that dedication, that really drive to do what they can to be able to care for animals in our environment, our society. It's just amazing.
Well, that's well said, and I completely agree, and I look forward to speaking with ProBird next time. Great. And with that, Mike, thank you again for taking the time today. I know you wear multiple hats, so have a very busy schedule. So thanks for chatting with us. And let's continue to have this conversation move forward with our members and transition the service, hopefully.
Great. Thank you, Paul, for the opportunity. And thank you to all of OSRL, all your members and everything, for the tremendous support you've provided for GOWRS to date. And we hope to continue the relationship moving forward.
Great. Thanks a lot, Mike. See you soon.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye for now.